F2 Fan 5000 here, talking about the 2026 F2 driver lineup predictions. Now you see in front of you a table with the 11 F2 teams, and you see the drivers. You'll see 4 drivers currently on the screen, who are the 4 drivers I think will stay with their current team. I've got Luke Browning staying at High Tech. I think he's very comfortable in that seat. He's very well known to the team. He's been with them since GB3. We've got Sebastian Montoya. He looks comfortable at Prema. He seems to have found his groove. I don't think he'll be winning the F2 championship this season. Highly unlikely, but he most likely will come back for a second crack. At Van Amersfoort, I think this is perhaps less likely than the previous 2, but I've kept Rafael Gomez, and at Trident I've kept Max Esterson, and I think that's less likely. However, I'll explain. Trident are a team that are struggling so much in F2. I think any of the drivers coming up from F3 who consider their worth will avoid Trident at all costs. They will see what's happened to Sami Megatunov, a driver who won 2 feature races in 2024 and finished 8th in the F3 championship, who's now sitting on 2 points after 10 rounds. Trident are definitely not the best team, and I think Megatunov will try and move on, but Max Esterson, depending on his budget, will try and stay at Trident. So now on the right hand side you see the list of names. The drivers in black are the drivers who I think are almost certain to race in F2 next season. The drivers in red are about 50-50. And the drivers in blue are highly unlikely. Now I wanted to quickly talk about the drivers in blue. We've got Noah Stromsted, Teofel Nahl, Tuukka Tarpinen and Alessandro Giusti. These are 4 young drivers, very young, who perhaps haven't quite got the results they wanted in F3 this season, and I think they'll come back for a second year. I think possibly Tuukka Tarpinen might want to make the step up to F2. He's in the top 10. I mean, so are all the drivers, of course. That Stromsted, Nahl, Tarpinen, Giusti. I think that if they come into F2, they'd want more, what can I say? They'd want more momentum behind them, but we'll see. Maybe they all want to step up to F2. I'd advise against it for their sakes. Now, starting off with one of the drivers almost certain to return to the sport is the highly rated Dino Beganovic. I think he'll want to leave High Tech. He doesn't look particularly confident in that team. One team, however, that he was confident at was DAMS at the end of 2024. Now, before I go on, let me explain. I'm going to put 3 drivers at each team. And one driver is just because, F2, predicting F2 teams is very difficult. So I'm giving myself a chance, right? Because A, it's very difficult to predict who the drivers are going to be. And secondly, it's even more difficult to predict what team they're going to go to in most instances. Though some are pretty obvious, but most of them aren't. So Beganovic, I think DAMS. I think that'll be because DAMS are going to lose their Jack Crawford, who's been their lead driver the past couple of seasons. They'll probably be happy to have someone like Beganovic. Joining him I'm not so sure. So we'll talk about Gabriele Mini. I see two options for Gabriele Mini because I don't think Gabriele Mini is happy at Prema. I don't think he'll be happy with the results that he's been getting. So, he has driven for high tech before, so he might be an outside chance for high tech, but I think more likely he'll want to go to a team that he can win the 2026 F2 Championship with. And he'll probably want to look at the seat, the Roden seat. Next up, I've got Oliver Goethe. I feel as though Oliver Goethe will want to prove that he has more to offer than what he's been able to show at MP. One team that he's driven for before in the past and did well at was Campos. And Campos are Red Bull affiliated, and so is Goethe. So I'm going to put Goethe in the Campos section. I think he'll be one of their drivers for the 2026 season. To me, it just makes sense, replacing the seat that Pepe Marti. I think Pepe Marti will move into a reserve driver role at Racing Bulls. Either that, or if he gets dropped by Red Bull, then he might try and come back for a third season somewhere in F2. But I'm saying that's less likely. And Sally Megatune, if this is a tough one, he's always been with Trident, but I feel justified, and it would be justified for him to feel as though he has more to offer than what he's been able to show at Trident. I'm sorry, but they are the worst team in F2. Sorry to say. Definitely at the moment, they always have been, really. They've always struggled. I don't know why, because they're so good. I'm just going to put him at ART for the moment. I think Sami Megatunov, ART is a decent fit. I'm thinking where else he could go. I suppose, I don't know, because ART are going to lose Victor Martins, in my opinion. I think he'll be moving on. I think he'll leave Formula 2 altogether. I think he'll be very unhappy with how the last couple of years have gone. Now, moving on, Kush, Miney, Cordell, these drivers may or may not come back. One driver who I think is almost certain to come into F2 next season is Formula 3 champion Rafael Camara, and he's almost certainly going to go to Invicta. I think that's a no-brainer. Obviously, you don't move up to F2 from F3 with the Trident team. You win with Trident and F3, and then you go to Invicta. He's the F3 champion, in F2, Invicta are the form team. It just makes sense. Coming to Mari Boyer. I know Boyer likes the Campos team, and it's possible that he drives for them in 2026. However, as I said before, Campos have Red Bull links. Boyer might return to the team that he drove for in 2023 in Euro Cup 3 and F3, and that's MP Motorsport. I wouldn't be surprised to see Mari Boyer end up at MP Motorsport. I don't think he'll go to Campos, because I think that Nikola Solov will go directly from the Campos F3 team to the Campos F2 team. To me, that makes sense. A couple of Red Bull juniors at Campos, one more highly rated than the other. It looks good. I suppose I'll just quickly go to Tim Tremnitz. Now, I suppose Tremnitz could end up at Campos, instead of Goethe. It's possible you could interchange Tremnitz and Goethe. I suppose if you were Tim Tremnitz, you'd want to end up at the F2 Campos team because they've been very strong. However, I just feel like Tim Tremnitz and MP are a good fit, and he'll want to get, and obviously Richard Vashaw has shown that you can do good things at the MP motorsport team. I think there's also another opportunity for Tremnitz, and that could be Rodin. So obviously if the chance is that Gabriele Mini goes to high tech, then instead of Tremnitz going to Rodin, he goes if Gabriele Mini goes to high tech instead of Rodin, I see the Rodin seat being for Tremnitz. And that brings me to Stensorne. And I wouldn't be surprised if Tremnitz went to Campos as well. I'm just going to leave him as a real outside choice. I think most likely MP. Now Stensorne, he likes high tech. Him and the team are loyal to each other. So I think most likely he goes to high tech. But if it's Gabriele Mini that goes to high tech, then Stensorne might take, as I said, if Gabriele Mini goes to high tech, I think Tim Tremnitz will go to Rodin, and I think Stensorne will go to MP. I think that's a less chance though. So with that, I've put all the drivers who are almost certain to be in F2 next season in the seats I think they will be in. Camara is going to be at Invicta. I think most likely Goethe and Solov at Campos. Luke Browning and Stensorne at High Tech. Boganovic at Dams. Tremnitz and Boyer at MP. Gabriele Mini at Rodin. Sebastian Montoya at Prema. Megatunif at ART. And the two smaller teams, Van Amersfoort, have Via Gomez tried and keep a hold of Max Esterson. And as I said, these drivers might spin around a bit. Tremnitz, as I said, if Mini decides to go to high tech, or if he doesn't end up at Rodin, he ends up at high tech, then I think Stensorne will go to MP and Tremnitz will go to Rodin, or there's an outside chance that Tremnitz will go to Campos, which probably means Goethe would stay at MP in that case, or somewhere. I think most likely it's Goethe and Solov at Campos. Now, these drivers in red are the ones that I think are most likely going to come into the sport next year. Though, as I just said, I suspect Tuukka Tarpinen might want to make the jump. It's possible. Now, let's talk about the teams. Invicta, very successful team in F2, formed team. I see that they like to have a 1-2 dynamic. So with Rafael Camara, they've got their lead driver. They're a bit like one of the lead Formula 1 teams. They like to have a number 1 and a number 2 driver. They don't like to have two equal drivers. As you've seen, they had Jack Doohan and Marino Sato, and then they had Cordeal, and then last time out they had Bortoletto and Kushmini. I don't think Kushmini's going back. I don't think Cordeal's going back. However, I think Roman Stanek has made an impression on the team, so I think he's one possibility for the seat alongside Camara. And if he doesn't stay at Invicta, I think he will leave the sport. Some of the other options I could consider, you know, Toyota have a lot of money. Maybe they want Ratomo Miata in the best car. I'm just going to throw out Chian Shields as an option. I think Shields is, let's put it this way, he's not been as bad as people have expected him to be. And he might make a decent number 2 driver to Rafael Camara, a support driver. At DAMS, the situation is less clear because with a lot of the teams that are coming up, you could assume that drivers from their F3 team might step up to the F2 team. As I said, Tramnitz, Stencil and these drivers stepping up directly with the team they're currently with. However, DAMS, I don't think any of the drivers they have in F3 are ready. And I think they might need 2 new drivers come 2026. I think Bogdanovic is one of them. But who might his teammate be? I think all the drivers in red are a possibility depending on the budget. You know, Joshua Dirksen might want to leave AIX and go somewhere where he can really show what he's worth. As I said, Miniata, then drivers that might have decent budget like Lacorte, G. I don't know about John Bennett's budget. Intrafubazak. Actually, I think Tazanopol Intrafubazak will find the way to Campos blocked by Red Bull Juniors. But he might, if he has funding, he might end up at DAMS. I think that's a strong possibility. And I look at the other names there, no one's really jumping out at me. I think I'd like to put a second option, but you know what? I don't really see anyone. Now, MP, as far as I'm concerned, that's settled. Coming to Roden, I think most likely Mini and much less likely Tremnitz is going to be the lead driver there. I wouldn't be surprised if one of their F3 drivers jump up. I don't think there's a point for Voisin to do a 3rd season in F3. I don't know about Roman Belinsky, but I think it's hard to pick between both of them. So it could be a toss-up between Belinsky or Voisin for that 2nd seat. I think, to me, Gabriele Mini to Roden makes sense. He'll want to go to a team where he can showcase that he's an F2 champion worthy driver, and that would really help him with his future. Whereas Belinsky, Voisin, I know the point, Voisin has had a moderately disappointing F3 season, but that mid pack in F3 is so tight. So maybe he'll get a second chance. Or Belinsky probably has a bit more funding than Callum Voisin. He's also ahead of him in the standings, but it's very close, as I said. Coming to Prema, Prema's a tough one because they used to be the top team in F2, but now they're somewhat of a struggling midfield team in F2, struggling for results, and I don't know what their options will be, but I think they'll stick with Sebastian Montoya, and I think most of the drivers coming up from F3 will try and go to teams that like Roden or High Tech or Campos or someone that's been strong in the ground effects era. And I think Noel Leon might just make up the direct jump. up from to the F2 team. I don't know who else they'll get. Leon has had a very tough time in F3 this season. It's not entirely his fault. I think he's built up a lot of credibility because of his wonderful campaign in 2024, where he's getting consistent podiums with Van Amersfoort. Coming to ART, that's another one. I feel as though they've really dropped off. But unlike DAMS, I think there is a clear path for the drivers in F3 to come up to the team. I don't think James Wharton is ready. I don't think he'll want to come to F2 after finishing 17th in F3. Well, they've still got one more round to go, but you know what I mean. I think he'd want to at least finish in the top 10. He wants to go back to F3, prove what he can really do. I think Lawrence Van Hoopen is running out of time. It's now or never. I think he'd be very happy to join ART. However, they might also go with Tuukka Tarpinen. I think it's a little bit too soon for Tarpinen, but maybe not. I think he was very good at the start of the F3 season. In the last third of the season, he's dropped off. 8th in the championship is respectable, but it's not that impressive. I think the wise choice is Van Hoopen and Megatunov, two drivers that have shown what they can do on a good day, but obviously Tuukka Tarpinen is probably the more highly rated driver of the three of them. So to me, that second ART seat is a toss-up between Van Hoopen and Tarpinen, and obviously a lot of this depends on who has budget. Now coming to AIX, he's not there, but we know that Emerson Fittipaldi Jr. is one of the drivers, so that's already confirmed. All right, and who's going to be alongside him? Well, I'm just going to go with Joshua Dirksen. I think Dirksen gels well with the team. He might be a bit frustrated at the moment, but he might want to go to another team. He might be an outside shot for DAMS, you know. But if not Dirksen, then at AIX might be Benavides. The team know him well. He's obviously a lot faster now than he was a couple of years ago. A year in Euro Formula Open has really made him a better driver. And we come to Van Amersfoort. I think Santiago Ramos. He has a feature race win under his belt with the team in F3. I think he should be going to that seat. What's another outside shot? I don't know. Cordell, Miney, Bennett, Miata. Oh, Miata might even end up at ART again, you know. Anyway, Miata might end up anywhere. But Van Amersfoort, well, I'll just leave it at Ramos and Villa Gomez for the moment. And Charlie Verts, I'm almost certain will go to Trident. I don't see why he will go anywhere else. I don't think he's expecting to fight for an F2 title. I think he's happy at Trident, and I think Wertz Esterson is a decent pairing for them. They need to work on their car setups, and hopefully that driver pairing can help them. So we've got a lot of names there, but I just want to go through it one last time so people are not confused. And obviously, any of these drivers in the red here, generally have decent. I don't know about John Bennett, but Cordell, Mini, Lacorte, Zagazeta, G, and Miata, they have good funding. So don't be surprised if they actually end up in one of the seats there. Yeah, well-funded drivers. So I don't know about John Bennett. I think he's actually done a pretty decent job. I don't know if he might still be an outside chance at staying at Van Amersfoort. Who knows? A bit of an underrated driver, actually. It's not easy to come from GB3 to F2 with Van Amersfoort, but he's starting to outpace Rafael Gomez. I think Gomez will stay at that team because of money, spots, and of course, he's not such a bad driver either. So to me, that's complete. So let me run through it one more time so it's clear. Invicta, I think Leonardo Fornaroli will move on and Rafael Camara will take his place. I think it's highly unlikely Fornaroli will return. I have read one of his recent interviews where he says if he doesn't win the championship, he'd like to do another season of F2, but I think he'll be talked out of that. And I don't see a Camara Fornaroli lineup likely in 2026. It's not impossible. I think more likely they'll go for either they'll stick with Stanek or they might choose another number 2 driver, someone like Chian Shields, but it could be someone else, like, as I said, Lacorte, Zagazeta, Cordell, maybe even Miata. I think they're all options for that second Invicta seat. Coming to Campos, I think most likely it's Goethe and Solov, an outside chance for Tremnitz. At High Tech, I think it'll be Luke Browning for sure, and it'll be Martinius Stenson there. Possibly Gabriele Mini, but I think not. Then at Dams, I think Dino Beganovic will go there, and I've got a couple of options like Zach, Dirksen. I have a feeling Lawrence Van Hoopen might be an option for this team as well. I think highly unlikely Dirksen, but if he just gets frustrated with AIX, who could blame him? And then coming to MP Motorsport, we've got Tim Trumnitz and Mari Boyer. And as I said, there's these 3 drivers interchange, right? If Mini doesn't, I think Gabriele Mini will want to go to Roden. I think a Mini Belinsky lineup is actually quite likely there. But if he can't go there, he might go to High Tech, which means Stensorner will go to MP. Which means Tremnitz might go to Roden. That's a possibility too. But I think most likely it'll be Tremnitz and Boyer at MP, Mini and Belinsky with Voisin an outside chance instead of Belinsky in the second seat at Roden. I've got Premo, I've got Montoya and Leon. I can't imagine who else might go there. I don't think Prema want drivers that just bring a lot of money. I think they want proper drivers, but they might not be able to attract the best drivers. Who knows, maybe someone I've overlooked, like, I don't know, Solov or Stanek, or someone might want to, maybe Megatunov wants to go there, or maybe Ratomo Miata wants to go there. Who knows? But I think it'll be Montoya and Leon, and I think ART will be Sami Megatunov, and most likely Van Hoopen, but it might be Tarpanen instead of Van Hoopen. AIX, 1 car is for Fittipaldi Jr., and I think the teammate will either be Dirksen or Benavides. At Van Amersfoort, Rafael Gomez I think will stay. And I think his teammate will be either Santiago Ramos or John Bennett. Or I could see a world in which, Via Gomez, maybe he isn't there, and maybe it's Ramos and Bennett. And then at Trident, I've got Furtz and Esterson. So, yeah, that's it. I can't really say much more, but I think they're the possible lineups. Anyone on the right there in the red, those drivers all have decent funding behind them, and they might take one of the seats. And the drivers in blue, I think, are very unlikely. They should do another season in Formula 3.